I'd like to thank our sponsors, Blood Moon Box, a monthly subscription box service for period pads and tampons to help support all humans who have a cycle for that time of the month, and no need to run to a store to mix and match period supplies that don't cater to the entire ebbs and flows of your cycle. There are 2-box options based on your cycle, light and medium, and then heavy. And in addition to the period products, you'll also receive PMS herbal teas, a candle, and some other items for your time of the month. You can reserve a box by navigating to bloodmoonbox.com. And bloodmoonbox.com is on a mission to destigmatize the idea of period blood. At Blood Moon Box, they believe that it is the time to honor the enchanting magic within every person who has a cycle. So join us in embracing the magic of your cycle with Blood Moon Box. Hi, my name is Yasmeen Turayhi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Now, today's episode is a little bit different. I've now turned the interview on myself, and I've asked my dear friend and past guest, Dr. Laurie Scolarie, to interview me for the show today. So I'm going to turn it over to Laurie.
Yes, thank you, Yasmeen. So my name is Laurie Scolarie, and today I have the honor of being the host and interviewer of this award-winning podcast. The question of the day is this: do you really know your host, Yasmeen? Let's dive into her fascinating world. As you know, Yasmeen Turayhi is the brilliant mind behind the captivating podcast Gateways to Awakening, produced by Hakawati. In this podcast, she explores wellness, personal development, and higher consciousness with leading experts. What's remarkable is that Gateways to Awakening ranks in the top 2% of all global podcasts, a testament to its engaging content. Yasmeen is a storyteller, podcast host, author, filmmaker, technology agency, founder, and consummate creator of all things. She holds a master's certification in intuition medicine from the Academy of Intuition Medicine. Her TEDx talk, How to Use Your Intuition to Make Better Decisions, gained over 13,000 views in just 6 weeks after its March 2021 launch. She has spent most of her career launching software products throughout Silicon Valley and beyond. So beyond podcasting, though, Yasmeen is a talented director, writer, and narrator. Her 10-part audio miniseries, Hyphenated-Journey, recently earned the prestigious honor of being featured as the top of Apple's podcast carousel for its immersive storytelling and got nominated in the International Women's Podcast Awards ceremony just recently this year in the category Changing the World One Moment at a Time. And in the world of cinema, Yasmeen's screenplay, A Star in the Desert, won 2 audience awards and was featured in 8 film festivals. She also runs an intuition school called Inner Knowing, and you can find out more about it at innerknowingschool.com, which we will leave in the show notes. She teaches creatives and executives on how to connect with their intuition in a 5-week and 3-month course. You should sign up for that. But today, we unravel the story and insights of Yasmeen as we get to know the host behind this captivating podcast. Welcome, Yasmeen, to your own podcast.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Oh my gosh, that was a lot, a lot to share.
You're doing a lot.
Yeah, I'm not used to talking about myself and sharing my story, so it's a little bit. There's a little bit of a cringe moment, to be totally honest.
Yeah, well, you know, in my podcast, I like to talk about how we uplift other women, especially women who inspire us, and you inspire me. So I think it's important to flip the script today because I know others in your audience will be inspired by your story. Can I dive into the questions?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. What, from your perspective, is intuition?
So intuition is really the ability to understand something as a direct knowing beyond thought. So the way that I describe this to people, which has made a lot of sense to me over the last 10 years of studying the space, is there's like non-local consciousness. So there's consciousness and wisdom really that is non-local. So it's not attached to the mind as a direct experience. And then there's local consciousness, which is attached to your own mind. And that's really where a lot of people, I think, a lot of camps have differing opinions on like, well, how do you know, how do you have access to this information that's nonlinear or not in the same time space? It's like, because of this concept of non-local consciousness, the non-local field of knowingness, let's put it that way. So if you could tap into that, there is an incredible direct experience of knowledge that is gained that is beyond linear time, and which is like one of my favorite things to master, because then you can like really harness your energy instead of your time in your life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So if we were to explain to an everyday person walking down the street the best way for them to access their intuition at the highest level, how would you describe that?
Yeah. So to start out, if I was just starting on this path, I think the first and most important thing to understand is to be very present and in your body. Like oftentimes most people's thinking or their consciousness is in the future or the past. And it's really hard to get intuitive insights when your energy is scattered. So think of it like the way a snake kind of takes in their energy, sometimes leans back, coils, like contracts a bit, like comes into themselves. And then when they direct their focus, it's like they know they can direct their energy towards a certain, space. And so there is something really beautiful about collecting your energy, getting very grounded, getting very present, that allows the doorway for intuition to open up. And unfortunately, I think most people are just not completely in their bodies. There's a lot of disassociation happening in culture. And I would say even more to the point, when we have fun in our culture today, we are often doing things that are very disassociating, like drinking or eating not so much, but like anything that has an addiction to it, just sort of disconnecting from this moment to get to the next moment. That's really what everyone is chasing. It's like a moment that feels juicier than the next, right? And so it's really hard to make sense of energy if you're diffused in your awareness.
Yeah, it's like the folks are looking for these small dopamine hits, and so the suggestion is get in your body, be in the now, connect with yourself first. And then once you have that foundation, then you can start to really listen to your intuition. Did I get that right?
Yep, that's correct. That's correct. And I think what's interesting is I think a lot of people are going straight into trying to access higher realms through let's say plant medicine or psychedelics or things that are really very disassociating even further to access intuition. And what I've noticed, what's been happening just kind of, I would say anecdotally, is that people will sort of try to go into the upper chakras and gather information, but they're not able to really integrate it because they haven't learned how to ground and become fully embodied. And that is like a very big practice, I think, for even people that have time and energy and space. We live in a world that is constantly assaulting our senses, right? There's screens everywhere. I was on a plane the other day, and I purposefully don't watch a lot of shows because I'm very intentional about what my eyes get the privilege of seeing. Let's put it that way.
That's a nice way of saying it.
Right. And like all around me is just like violence. And I saw myself, because of the my human nature is that I saw myself kind of watching these movies and watching what was around me. Right. And I felt my energy shift. And so whatever we feed ourselves in our subconscious, whatever we feed ourselves in our surroundings, is getting fed into the subconscious algorithm that is then playing out in the rest of our life. So that's what most people are basically, unfortunately, unaware of the subliminal and subconscious programming that is happening all around them, and then also in their intentional, lives.
Yes, I agree. That's why I always say, don't start your day by reading the news, which is such a traditional thing that everybody does. Like they read the news or they watch the news, but that is a way to bring your energy and intuition down, every day. So we have, avoid that. Maybe watch the news later to keep up to date, but not to start your day. Can you tell us more about your unique approach of creating transformation through managing energy?
Yeah. So this inquiry of energy started for me close to 10 years ago, because I was the type of person who could, would wake up and I'd have so much energy and so many ideas and would just like jump out of bed. But then by the end of the day, I found myself exhausted, like really, really exhausted and tired. And like I just didn't have energy to do the things I really wanted to do. I'd always talk about things, oh, I was going to write a book one day. Or, oh, I'm going to make a movie one day. I'm going to do this one day. And I would say like the majority of my younger years, I sat in this dreamlike space about the future, but I wasn't able to really do anything about it. And when I started to understand how energy works through this intuition school that I attended for 2 years, I also read everything you could imagine on energy, right? From different authors on intuition, on consciousness, on neuroscience, neuroanatomy. And I really started to understand that there is an energy system in us and all around us. And so most of us are not aware of the, let's say, user manual of this energy system. And I think my kind of gateway into this world actually started with getting a lot of acupuncture done. Acupuncture is an amazing gateway to exploring how energy moves through the body. Similar to kind of like electrical outlets, right? That need repair, that might need some kind of ping to move energy, to move chi that gets stuck, right? Emotions get stuck oftentimes. And so I just found that to be really interesting. There was this sort of emotional layer, this spiritual layer, this physical layer. And I'd say like a lot of the things that I was reading were just focusing on like one piece of that puzzle. So like talk therapy or things that were really focused on just the emotional world, like somatics, or, a lot of different therapies were really good at tackling very specific things that could help energy move. But in my opinion, in my observation, it wasn't really giving us the full story of how it all worked together. And especially from, I'd say, this like spiritual dynamic that is playing out. So oftentimes we have, we have different types of energy running in our system that has, you could even describe it, right? There's like I would say like the brightness of shining stars all the way to like a pulsation, penetration. Like there's all these ways that we experience energy, with lights, with sound. And so for me, it became very experiential to really dive into this space because I am clairaudient and also sometimes clairvoyant. Depends. It's not on demand. People always like, tell me what you see. And I'm like, it doesn't always work like that. Because again, it really, for me, it's when I'm really grounded, when I'm hydrated, when I've taken really good care of myself, when I have energy in my body, I can actually access a lot of information. So my methodology is focused on belief systems. So I really focus on thought quality, and I've created a program to help people decondition their old programming. You can do whatever you want. You can make the impossible that happen. And so that's exciting. So I like to help people really unlock that. And so everyone who comes through my program has to pick something that kind of scares them a bit, something that they have been avoiding or something that that they really wanted to do. And we take a step together in that direction. So that's really the crux of the Inner Knowing School.
Wow, that's incredible. And it sounds like with all this experience at the learning institution and everything that you've learned through your studies and your experience working with all these companies, I'm making an assumption here because of all the vast knowledge that you have. Is that why you started the Gateways to Awakening podcast, or tell me why you did?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I was kind of sitting in these two worlds. If you've watched Harry Potter, there's like the School of Wizardry, with Harry Potter and the other students who are wizards, and then there was like the Muggle world, right? And when I was going through this intuition school, I mean, I also accidentally fell into this path because I didn't really grow up in a culture, and I would say even a space where I had the capacity to think about things that were spiritual or mystical. Like it just wasn't in my world, right? Growing up, I didn't even have access to yoga. So, it was really a big stretch for me to come this far on this path because I didn't actually believe it. And I wasn't open to it. I had kind of been a curious philosopher for much of my life. And so I'd always ask these existential questions, but that was kind of like where the conversation would end. It was like philosophical, but never spiritual. And so when I had this kind of really big experience in Hawaii, on the Big Island, I found out that I was clairaudient. And it was the information that was given to me was so profound that I couldn't logically make sense of it. And so that was the beginning for me of my path of inquiry into this space. So I really approached it like an academic. I really approached it as a skeptic. And I will say, I think for the first year or so, I sometimes would think I was like making it up. I was like, is this actually what I'm hearing? Or, maybe I'm just lucky, or maybe I'm just, maybe it's just a coincidence, or maybe it's just a remembering, or, there's so many things that you could say, right, about how information comes through. But the number of synchronicities that started to happen didn't actually make mathematical sense. There's just no way that this many synchronistic moments could have happened. And so it was like one thing after the other that really opened my mind to phenomenon, like what we call phenomenon, but is actually there's a lot of information available around near-death experiences, like neuroanatomists, like Dr. Jill Bolt-Taylor, who had a stroke and explains her experience in My Stroke of Insight, to Brian Weiss from Many Lives, Many Masters, talking about past life regression and what he experienced. And so it just, when you start to read a lot of books, like hundreds of books, and they all kind of say the same thing, like the academics, the quantum physicists, the mystics, they're all saying the same thing, which is like, we all come from this one source of energy, and we will all return to that one source of energy. And that's really like very cool if you can grok that, if you can really understand this connection to this creator, and that whatever you want to call it, right? You could just call it math, right? Because there's just so much perfection in the cosmos that I'm like, okay, if you don't believe in anything, do you believe in math? So that was the inspiration for the show, was to bridge the world of the left brain and the right brain, to bring the mystics and the skeptics and the academics that are kind of in between these worlds into a platform where we could like really talk about these things, these subjects, in a way that made sense to anyone. And so in the beginning, the show really was mostly like a lot of academics talking about their experience. And then I brought in a lot more mystics.
Wow. Well, it's interesting because you are bridging, like you said, the worlds of, like, if I'm thinking of all the work you've done with all these companies, right? So all the Silicon Valley companies, and then you really don't hear about concepts of energy and spirituality in marketing approaches, for example, or the approach for the company to launch a product. How, in your experience, do you merge those two? And then in working with all these companies, are there any common themes that you see?
It's a great question. Yeah. So, so it's interesting, like my path of working with startups and in the tech field started a very long time ago at a time when I was not interested in spirituality, when I had no kind of concept of how to manage energy. So my career path has been very nonlinear and unconventional. And so I definitely use my logical mind in this work, and I also use my intuition. And the way that has served me is in the interpersonal dynamics of my relationships at work, and especially with customers. So, and to be totally honest, Laurie, I mean, I think I don't always use my intuition. I sometimes, like all humans, I definitely forget the energy piece and then go into more of the muggle world perspective, which is very focused on linear thinking, linear time. And there's so many cool things happening. I'm so in awe of many of the founders that I work with who have been just building so many companies that are actually helping humanity move forward, right? The interest like mental health and climate tech and artificial intelligence and different industries that are going to help with, health tech and neurotech and that sort of thing. So I've just been very excited about this conversation around like consciousness, spirituality, and tech. But in the beginning, of course, I was not tracking that. And I think what I noticed was that Silicon Valley is very much a place where people have really big dreams and they believe in the impossible. And so that spirit of entrepreneurship for me was so potent as an alchemizing force of how you can apply that to all other parts of life, right? Some people,
Wow. Mm-hmm.
right? Like some people really want to build big businesses and companies or big products that are game-changing for humanity. Some people are doing it because of their ego, right? And so I think that's the thing that I started to notice as I got a little bit deeper into my career in tech. It was very obvious to me who was building things based on ego and who was building things based on their heart. And
financial.
And exactly.
Financial motivations as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's just like you could tell that there was, an overprivileged towards, one polarity, and I think it's like both, right? It's like having the heart be the creator force and then the mind and the ego following. Okay, like because people who have very strong conviction and confidence they're overpowering their will into the sector of reality that they want to build in. So for example, which in the energy world is a very important tool to master and understand. We are all putting out visuals and pictures and thoughts in our space, and there are people that can manipulate you or may have really strong will. And so we want to be able to understand when that's happening, and then also know how to deal with it. Like I know how to deal with people now who have big egos. I know how to deal with people who have different types of emotional stuff going on only because of energy, right? I can immediately tell where someone's awareness is in their body, what they're thinking about. So that has become a bit of a superpower. And I think, I think it's like a very interesting space to be in, to be able to tap into intuition and not really talk about it, right? Because I don't think the world, especially the tech world, I don't know how open people are to this, but I will say in the last year or two, it's been much more welcome than it ever has been before. Because before I would just be like, okay, I would never even open the conversation or talk about it. And I've noticed that now when I start talking about intuition, well, it's usually with founders or teams that feel scattered in their energy or something feels like there's a block, there's an inner block that is manifesting in the physical world. And that to me, is quite interesting to to unravel. And so people have been open to it. I've been very surprised, happily surprised
Wow.
that, the consciousness is, it's evolving, and
Yes.
it's cool. Yeah. It's cool to see this shift, that has transpired. So.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to the day. I live in San Francisco. I look forward to the day where I see when I'm sitting in a coffee shop and I see these CEOs talking about intuition and energy. So I'm excited that you're trying to, forge a path forward for that. But yeah, that's fascinating for you as a person sort of supporting these companies to get them to think about the intuition and energy for their teams. And then also for folks to start thinking about it as individuals for their lives, for the companies they run, et cetera. Like you said, if you can really harness that, it can be a superpower. So,
Yes,
and I think you have just inspired so many by bringing us all these knowledgeable folks to your podcast. And it seems like if I were the host of your podcast, I'd be learning every time I get another speaker or guest on the podcast, because it just grows your body of knowledge, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's been actually mind-blowing because what is so interesting about interviewing so many people in the same kind of space is that you start to see themes and trends emerge, and that to me has been so cool, right? It's not just about like a couple podcast interviews, but after 170 podcast interviews, there's quite a revelation of information on the way the world works. Now, I think what's been quite frustrating though is not being able to share this knowledge with people because of maybe the language. We don't have like the language that is quite accessible to speaking about the invisible world right now. And so it is difficult, right, to really dig in and talk about what's your inner narrative, what's the inner world happening, what's happening inside of you. And a lot of times, like, people just don't have time to sit and reflect and ask themselves these deeper questions. Carolyn May says, like, we change because of curiosity or chaos. So oftentimes people will ask those questions when there's chaos, but not when there's just like a, kind of a curiosity. So it's, yeah, but the theme really comes back to, I've heard this actually a couple times. I think Thich Nhat Hanh said this. He was not on my podcast, I wish. But I've heard people reference this quote from him from the podcast. And he said, people ask him, when will the world change? And he said, when enough Western women become conscious. And another guy, I forget his name, Brad Laughlin, I think it was his name, also said the same thing. A lot of people have come on the show and have said that. So that was one thing that I felt like was an interesting recurring theme.
Wow.
When enough Western women become conscious, and that we're all one. Like, we really are all one. And so we don't live in this zero-sum game reality. We live in this win-win reality. So when we hurt another person, we're actually just hurting ourselves. And so that's the crux of like all things. And our thoughts really matter way more than you could possibly think. Like, I sort of tell people, imagine that every single one of your thoughts is something people could hear. How would you think then? How would you think about the world if everyone could hear your thoughts?
It would be a different world. It might be a nicer world.
It might be. And there'd have to be some reckoning, right? That you can't actually allow yourself to go down these rabbit holes. Like, people would be like, hey, what the hell's going on? So.
Yeah, no, I think, okay, so you brought some themes that you're hearing from all the podcasts. Are there other themes that we've missed?
I think I'm just trying to think. I mean, there's so many good podcast episodes. Like, if you have questions about money, right? Sarah McCrum wrote this book about the energy of money, and that just did an incredible job explaining the energy of money. She kind of does this conversation with money in the same way that Neil Donald Walsh had a conversation with God in Conversations with God. So that was a spectacular episode. I mean, really just depends, like, whoever is listening probably has a desire to improve maybe 1 or 2 or 3 parts of their life. And so every episode has kind of a different lens on reality, but it's in service of waking up a part of themselves. So some people, jive more with shows that are about like tantric numerology or Kundalini yoga. And then others might privilege shows that are about, quantum physics and synchronicity and flow and the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, and what are the studies that are coming out of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And so there's just like so many different types of shows. We do a lot of shows also on health and wellness. There's a lot of shows, I think, because women and women's health has been sort of under represented in media. I've been looking for shows that are going to bring out information that can be helpful for people all over the world. I think we've got like 72 plus countries listening in. So,
Wow.
So my desire is that it's accessible as a global platform and not just for the US audience.
So of all the people that you've interviewed, or just all the people that you've met in your life so far, who inspires you? Or, it could be one person, or are there some great influences in your life you can share with us?
It's just such a big question. Like, I think that my answer might surprise people because I feel like I went down such a big academic road for so long because that's how I was privileging the world through my mind. And I think over this last year, I started to realize like it didn't really matter how much I knew anymore. It's just what really mattered was, do I have a sense of inner peace in my life? Am I able to inspire others around me to have inner peace? Like, have I managed my own emotional world? Right. And so I started to actually apply all this knowledge. And so that's how I came up with the wisdom for the Inner Knowing School, was that I really practiced this on myself. I really wanted people to apply this to their life so that they could see changes. Like, I think Neville Goddard, was this mystical author, talks about this. I think the word that he uses is like deferred occupancy or something like that, which is basically like looking at something without actually inhabiting it and without actually embodying it and being it. And that to me was really interesting. It was like, well, how can we actually shift our lives? Like, who cares about, honestly, philosophy and mysticism and spirituality and all this? Who cares if it's not making your life better? If you're not having more fun in your life, if you're not enjoying your life, who cares, right? And so that was the inquiry that I have had over this last year. And so the people that I really, really looked up to, are people like Renee Garcia and Jerry Amica, people like you, Laurie, who are masterful in energy management. I mean, really, you definitely really inspired me. And our friend, Lauren. And yeah, so folks who are really doing the practical application of this work were folks that were really inspiring. And then also a lot of the quantum physicists who could explain the physics of this. And, one of my favorite quotes was from Sky Isaacs Nelson. He said, I said to him, are we creating our reality? And he said, no, it's not that we're creating our reality. We are observing our reality. We are tuning the radio dial of our awareness to the reality that we want to see. And that's so powerful. It's like, well, where's my radio dial now, right? Like, what do I want to tune the dial to?
Yeah. So it's really the folks that you're inspired by are the people who are practically applying the work.
Yes.
So sometimes we can be, you think of who inspires us, and it could be the big names and the big philosophers, like you said, but other times it's like, who's living this life? They may not have, a lot of people may not know who they are, but how are they able to harness their energy, understand how to track their thoughts, control their thoughts. And this is a new era happening, right, in our world, where folks are starting to dive into this. Like you said, people are starting to talk about it, even in these big companies. But in everyday life, we hear manifestation all the time now. It seems like a buzzword that's everywhere. It's these terms that I would say even 5 years ago you didn't hear every day on all the different social media platforms. So it's like becoming a little more mainstream. Don't you feel like it's headed in at least that direction?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think, since The Secret came out, it's been it's become very popular. I'm not sure how many schools of thought though are really making a big dent in people's lives. Like I think a lot of people are still not practicing this work and oftentimes just like watching it or understanding it. And the way that you could see that, honestly, is just like, because I have now a lot of clients and I'm always just like, the results are just your life. That's it. It's like, what have you created? What have you built? How are you feeling each day? Even if you don't want to do anything, but if you have a sense of inner peace, right? And clarity, all those things really matter. So to me, it's just that like what's in your mirror is the real answer to everything happening in your inner world. So I don't pay attention as much to what people say. I'm just very aware of like, are you complaining all the time? Are you talking negatively about people and taking no responsibility for yourself? Like, are you always playing victim? And so it's interesting. I've been doing this like no complaining challenge this year, which I've actually done this challenge with a bunch of people in my course. And it's funny because I think I got like one email from someone who was like, okay, day one, I failed before noon. I was like, I just got my coffee and went into like some negative, the line was too long. And so it's just so funny. I think a lot of people, have not trained the wild animal in their mind at all. And so this no complaint challenge is really, really, revelatory because, try 30 days of no complaining. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but many people oftentimes when I get to know folks, I find that there's just a lot of, complaining about this person or this situation and it's fascinating because I think now after studying thoughts, I'm aware of the programs that we're all running programs. And by the way, I'm also, I have my own programs, right? That definitely not perfect, right? But I am aware of when I complain, and I have made a huge effort not to complain at all this year. And I will say I'm very proud
of. And it's December.
And it's December. I know. It's December. Well, this will come out, I think, a couple months later, so it'll be 2024. But
okay. All right. Well, then you would have completed the project.
I completed, yeah. And it's amazing, like what opens up when you don't complain. It's just because you're tuning the awareness, and you know this best, right? You're tuning the awareness to the reality that you want to see more of. And so and I have to catch myself if there have been moments, of course, that I would go down, this pathway. And I sometimes tell people it's like you can't change a negative thought, right? A negative thought is like being in a crappy neighborhood and you're trying to fix your house, you're trying to fix your neighbors, trying to fix all the things around you. But all you need to really do is get in a car and then go to the neighborhood that you want to be in. Go to the house you want to be in, be with the people you want to be in. It's really that simple. If you don't like where you're at, it's just so much more energy to have to fix everything. And so I think it's good to understand what got you there. Okay. Well, how the hell did I end up in this neighborhood? How did I end up here? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like what situations did I choose for myself? But now that I have this awareness, I don't have to stay here. You just make that decision. I do not have to stay there. And you get up, you get into a taxi, and you leave. And it's that simple.
That's fascinating. So what do you think of also the concept of, okay, you're in this neighborhood. It's not the ideal neighborhood. You're here. You just found out that you are the master of your thoughts and therefore the creator of your life. So what in that crappy house, crappy neighborhood that you're in, what do you think of the concept of learning from mistakes, lessons learned? What can I learn from this situation I'm in?
Yeah. Great question, Laurie. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I feel like this comes from reality transurfing and a lot of work with Renee Garcia. But, this concept of when you are an artist and a creator, you can create massive realities, just massive creations, right? And I was really good at that myself, right? create new worlds and new opportunities all the time. But a lot of artists, a lot of creative people can then also create really destructive experiences, right? Like, okay, we're just going to go down to something, someone pisses you off, and then all of a sudden you're in this weird space, right? Where there's just all problems and unnecessary conflict. And so it's an interesting thing because I see a lot of artists surf these highs and lows, highs and lows, highs and lows. And the interesting thing is when you're aware of your thoughts, you can actually get off this roller coaster and just look at yourself, right? And like look at your thoughts. And so now, when one's outer world is reflecting back to them what they don't like, instead of it being a year or months or years or decades even, you just decide the moment you see something you don't like, you just ask yourself, where were my thoughts right before this happened? Did I have a scarcity thought? Did I have a judgment thought? What did I do that shifted my reality?
You mentioned the visit to Hawaii that you went to that seemed to be sort of a catalyst, but was there a particular person or event that placed you on this path? And tell us a little bit more about that journey.
Yes, a great question. So I went to Hawaii after a breakup, and it was actually right before I went to Hawaii and right after the breakup. A friend of mine had said, you should try this thing called Reiki, because I had difficulty sleeping at the time, which I normally don't, but at the time I did. And I didn't want to take any, prescription medicine. And so as a non-believer in anything spiritual, I was like, what the heck is Reiki? I don't want to do that. What do you have to pay someone to put their hands on you? I was like so skeptical. And she's like, yeah, just try it. What do you have to lose? And I thought to myself, what do I have to lose? So I went and got a Reiki session, and I really felt the energy around me. I really felt it. And I've always been very intuitive and I'm quite emotionally sensitive, but I just would kind of call it emotional sensitivity. I didn't really understand what energy meant. And so that really opened up my world. I ended up getting like a Reiki 2 certification. And the whole time I was like, is this even real? But so it was very early in my path. And then I ended up going to Hawaii because one of my best friends from childhood her mother had passed away kind of unexpectedly from cancer. It was very devastating for her. So she had mentioned that there was this retreat center on the Big Island where it felt like it was heaven on earth. She said it was the one place I could go to that whole year that was just a place where she felt happy, because she was very close with her mom, and we were actually all close. So it was very hard on me too. And she had always mentioned this place with great fondness. And I thought to myself, well, I'm going through like some kind of transformation. And of course, romantic heartbreak is certainly not the same kind of heartbreak, but it was heartbreak. And I decided, let me go and treat myself to this, shamanic Hawaiian trip. It was really just a lot of visualization and meditation. People always ask, was there plant medicine? No, there wasn't. But what happened was I met this woman named Rachel, and she's a little bit older, very savvy, very, very smart, very interesting. And she was a lawyer, and went to, I think it was like, I actually don't want to give too many details because she might not like that I'm mentioning her in this story. But she said to me when I was in Hawaii that, because we talked about, it was really funny actually, we were on this retreat in Hawaii where a lot of people who were there were also there because of a breakup. So it was like a very funny, we kind of all like laughed about it. All of a sudden I was like counseling people, and I'm like, I don't know how I ended up counseling people, but it was very,
you're like, I need counseling.
Totally. I was like, wait, I guess like I'm here to hold space. But so she said to me, I think we got into this conversation about the gods, like the Hawaiian gods and like the spirits of Hawaii and all that kind of stuff. And I said, you don't really believe in that stuff, do you? And she's like, oh, no, I do. And she said, if you pray to the island god of Hawaii, she'll grant you all your wishes. And I looked at her and I said, come on, I'm not going to. And I think because I also grew up, with definitely a construct of religion around me, I was very opposed to praying. It had been like over a decade since I prayed, maybe more. And she said, if you pray, if you just do it, what do you have to lose? You have to ask for it in order to see it. And so for some reason, the next day I go on this long run in the off the beaten path in Hawaii. And I'm on, kind of right by the coast, by the ocean, and it's pitch black because of the time difference. So I'm waking up very, very early, and it's so dark there that there's no lights. So you can't even see your hands. And I go for this long run, and I'm listening to music with my like long, wiry I guess they weren't AirPods back then, but they were kind of a headset, the wiry headset. I don't even know what they're called. So I'm going for these long runs, and I was on the right side of the street, and I just heard this voice that said, "Take 2 steps to the left." It was very bizarre. It was very, very, when people ask me what it sounded like, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I reflected on that moment a lot. It sounded like it was a higher version of myself. That's kind of what it sounded like, right? And so I take 2 steps to the left. Now, all of a sudden, I'm in the middle of the road, and out of the blue, in like about 10, 15 seconds later, there is a huge semi-truck that turns left, and it literally, the wind of the big truck graces my right shoulder. And
wow.
and almost killing me. And the woman driving, it was an old woman driving, looks out of her rearview mirror, and we both look at each other. She abruptly stops her truck. And then, it's a huge truck, right? So she couldn't really see that well. And she goes, "Oh my God, I didn't see you at all. I would have just run right through you." And she started crying. It was a really dramatic moment, a very, very emotional moment for both of us. And I looked at her and I said, "I know." I was like, "But I took 2 steps to the left." And she didn't understand what I meant, but I remember thinking, what the hell was that? Wow. What was that? That's so bizarre. And I think what was really interesting for me was that I was listening to music. So it wasn't like I had a thought even. It was sort of like I was listening to music, and then this message came through. And as a very logical, skeptical person, for me, that was the beginning of a very long road. And, I ended up getting my, like asking doctors, like, if was there anything wrong with me? They're like, no. And then when I found this intuition school, that was the place where I, for the first time, met other intuitive, like very deeply intuitive people. And the thing about intuition is that we all have an intuitive skill set. It's just that most of us have not trained that skill set. And, Aristotle is actually famously coined with coming up with the 5 senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. But we actually have, according to Dr. Francesca McCartney, we have over 21 intuitive senses. And so we actually all have intuitive senses. It's just that almost nobody has gone through any kind of educational training to learn it and understand it and harness it. So people are quite disorganized with how they use their energy.
I think we just came up with the title for your next book, Take 2 Steps to the Left.
Oh, I like that, Laurie.
Right?
Isn't that
why stop now? You've got 3 books. Get the next book going. We just covered all the basic topics of it, right? So your intuition, harnessing your energy, but really observing where you are with your thoughts. There's a lot of good content here.
I love that title. I don't know if Beyonce would be happy about that. Doesn't she have a song like "To the Left, to the Left"?
Yeah, that's "To the Left, to the Left." This one's "Take 2 Steps to the Left."
That's
so
true.
I think we're good.
I like that. Yeah. Okay. Book coming out 2024.
Yes. You heard it here first, people. Let me ask you this. What sort of things have surprised you in this journey?
Oh my gosh. There's so much that has surprised me. And I think that I am always willing to be wrong. And also I'm always willing to see that my perspective is limited in comparison to the vast universe of infinity. I think that there's so much more to our reality that we haven't even scratched the surface of. And I'm just surprised at, I guess, how many people are not curious about what's possible. I think that's what I'm mostly surprised about. I'm like, why are we just sort of reacting and, reacting to this collective hypnosis, this dreamlike hypnosis of feeling like life has to go a certain way. I think, there's a woman who asked me today, she's like, oh, I thought you just like launched this thing. And I thought you did this intuition school. And I said, yeah, but I'm not agreeing to like the construct of reality. Like who says that we have to do anything? It's just a program that someone else created and we're following it. Right. And as long as we are following our heart, we can create such a magical life. I mean, such a magical life. And I will say just two quotes, which I'm going to swear because the person who mentioned it to me swore. So apologies to the audience. Two quotes that kind of summed up my experience this year, which I thought were hilarious. One person said, I love my life, but I also kind of want to have another life in which like I experience all the things that you get to experience, which I thought was really interesting, right? Because it's about, I think a lot of people might be scared, to peek under what's behind the curtain, what's behind the veil, what's behind consensus. Like, what if your job was taken away? What if and by the way, this is a very real question, right? As AI continues to come online, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to be left with these deep questions, maybe at a point where they won't have the luxury to ask these questions. So I think it's important to ask these questions now. So yeah, so that's what surprises me.
Okay, so final question. What final takeaways do you have for your audience today as we summarize you, Yasmeen?
My final takeaways are to listen to your heart always and really just spend time making decisions that are for your highest evolution as a soul on this earth. And to also, I would say, ask the question, like, who am I in service for? Like, how can I be a steward of the planet? How can I help others? And I think, there's a lot of studies that also show this, that when we're stuck, when we don't know what to do next, we can help others, and that'll open up our own perspective. It'll open up our own energy. And so I think that's just such an important way to live, is to just really spend time in your heart and really be careful about the thoughts that you dwell in, because you are the artist creating the canvas of your own reality. And it doesn't matter what kind of paint you're given, what kind of tools you're given, you can actually create a masterpiece from anything if you believe that you can.
That is incredible and a powerful way to end this conversation. Thank you for letting me be your interviewer today. It's been an honor, and I know I speak on behalf of all of the folks that listen to your podcast that you are an incredible host, and I think we all feel fortunate to have you at the helm of Gateways to Awakening. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Thank you for everything. And thank you for also being such a guide and a mentor in my life as well.
And you are to me as well. So together we are going to change the philosophical thinking of Western women.
Yes, yes. Amen.
Awesome.
And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about your host, me, Yasmeen Turayhi. And you can tune into Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again. What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self-mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access, live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed, and you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead.